Okay, welcome everybody. I just want to make a couple of quick announcements before we start this meeting. Obviously, we're all doing this on Zoom. I am recording it, and we hope to make that recording available on our website here within the next couple of days. Right now, I have everybody muted. When it comes time to do the public hearing, the way I want to try to keep this organized is for you to use the raise hand feature, which is the little smiley face at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, it'll come up and say raise your hand, and then we'll be able to go through and then unmute people and let them give their testimony and then move on without too much chaos. We also have the chat feature, and if you have anything, you're welcome to use that if you have something to say there as well. We'll try to keep on that as quickly as we can and make sure that everyone has the opportunity to say what they need to say. And so we've got a couple minutes here before we actually get started. We're going to dive into that. And we've got the public hearing towards the top of our agenda, so we'll be able to get that almost first thing, and you won't have to stick around for the rest of our meeting, but you're more than welcome to do so. Move this a little closer, and want to make sure you speak loudly so it gets through the, yeah. Here's another OEM guy.
All right, it's 12 o'clock. Thank you for coming to the Rogue Valley Sewer Services March 17th meeting. We will do a roll call, and at this time, I would like each of the board members to introduce themselves as part of that roll call so that the folks that are on the Zoom with us will know who we are. And my name is Kay Harrison. I'm the board chair. Wayne, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Wayne, you're muted.
Well, I'm Jim Lewis, board member from Jacksonville.
I guess I'll go ahead. I'm Jim Snyder, board member, just under 2 years.
Wayne Brown, board member.
Parker. And Mike
somewhere.
Parker.
Get unmuted here. I'm Mike Parker, board member, 20 years.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for coming. We're going to go ahead with a couple of things we need to do as business. The first thing is the consent agenda. And I noticed that I was not present at that last meeting, but I was. My name wasn't in there. So we need to make that correction. Is there anything else that anybody knows? Okay, can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda with the correction?
I so motion.
Uh-oh.
That was Mike Parker motion.
Yeah, and Wayne seconded it.
Right.
He's fast.
Yeah.
Fast.
Roll call, please.
Wayne Brown,
Yes.
Dee Harrison,
Yes.
Mike Parker,
Yes.
Jim Lewis,
yes,
Jim Snyder.
yes,
Okay, consent agenda is approved. Next, we have resolution number 2103, an award of contract for the Lagoon Public Access Project.
Okay, just real quick, this is a consulting contract to do a management plan for the portion of the lagoon that we don't need for treatment anymore. We are working in conjunction with the Watchful Wildlife Foundation, the Jackson County Audubon Society, and the Bear Creek Watershed Council, or the Rogue River Watershed Council, I believe. And they've all contributed the bulk of the funding for this. Our exposure is going to be about $8,000 of that. The rest of it's coming from these other organizations. And what they're going to give us is a kind of a management plan on how and when to let water into this portion of the lagoons to enhance the habitat for birds. It's kind of part of our overall master plan for the lagoon property, and we are recommending awarding this contract.
All right, does any of the board members have questions for Carl? Are we ready for a motion then?
A motion, we accept resolution 2103, awarding of the contract for the Lagoon Public Access Project.
I'll second it.
L06.
Jim Lewis,
I'll
second.
second.
Steiner did first, but I'm not sure. Okay, second. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Wayne Brown,
Yes,
Dee Harrison,
Yes.
Mike Parker,
Yes.
Jim Lewis,
Yes,
Jim Snyder.
yes.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. The motion has been passed. All right. Next, we have a public hearing. This is for ordinance 21-01, an ordinance to establish the Oak Valley Sewer Reimbursement District. And I have a little thing I need to read first, people, and so it just states that when you're wishing to speak, and because this is a Zoom meeting, we do it a little bit different. There's a button there that kind of lets us know that you want to speak, and then we'll unmute you. But as you speak, please clearly give your name and address and the spelling of your last name before you give your statement, and to direct all the questions and statements to the manager. This is basically, we want to have your input, but it's not necessarily a back and forth dialogue. We request that those in support speak first, and those opposing will have an opportunity to speak afterwards. Please present any questions or comments that you have at this time, and we'll keep going. And we're really glad so many people are present. We appreciate that. And when it's all done, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, Carl?
Okay, so we've been talking about this particular project for a couple of months now, and just to give you just another rehash of this, the sewer for this particular subdivision was originally built in the early 1990s. It was designed and constructed as a mobile home park. Soon after the design, the project was changed from a mobile home park to a subdivision. The sewer plans were never updated or changed, so they should have been updated to meet public sewer standards, and they were not. So the position we're in now is now that the houses have all been destroyed, in order to reconnect, we need to have public sewer available to them. So what this project would do would be to rebuild the public sewer, rebuild the sewer to public sewer standards. As a reimbursement district, the cost for building the project would be initially paid by Rogue Valley Sewer, and then we would collect each person's share of that expense when they make their actual connection to the sewer. So the questions that really are going to be, the decisions that are going to be made by the board today, one is whether or not to approve the district itself and to move forward with the project. And then the second part would be is how should the cost be allocated? If the full cost of the project is allocated to the individual lots, each homeowner would be expected to pay a little bit more than $12,000 for that connection. The way a reimbursement district is structured, that's a maximum amount. So if we end up getting good bids on the contract and that goes well and the costs come in less, you would be assessed less based on the actual cost, but the $12,085 would be the maximum. The second decision that we're going to ask of the board is to look at whether or not and to what extent the board is willing to contribute to financially to support this project. And that's a separate decision from actually creating the reimbursement district. And, you know, I put out a memo addressing the various issues surrounding that. I did send copies of these documents to representatives from the Homeowners Association, and hopefully that got distributed to as many people as possible. So it, you know, have a sense of what we are looking at in consideration. So I guess at that point, it's time to give a testimony.
Yeah. So Carl, you're kind of got everybody.
I am looking.
So anybody that would like to speak, we're going to start taking testimony now, and Carl will unmute you.
Yes, okay, someone is asking a question in the chat.
Okay.
And wants to know, because you said you wanted people in support to go first and people in opposition to go second. And this particular person wasn't sure if they were in support or in opposition. So I think we probably don't need to make that distinction. We can just let people speak when they want to speak.
I think so too. Let's go with that, because this is made for a little bit different type of public hearing than what we have going on today.
You need to open the public hearing.
Oh, and we hereby open public hearing now. I read, you know.
Oh, okay. I see.
So it's officially the public hearing is now open.
I don't want to clap. Okay. I see. Okay. All right. I see. I thought.
They should be at the top.
I thought I saw one. Okay, someone gave me a thumbs up, but I think they're trying to raise their hand. Let me find out who did that. Oh, it's gone.
Carl, that was Joan Dean.
It was who?
Joan Dean. She's raised,
Okay.
I think would like to
Okay,
speak.
there, I got it. Okay. Okay, Joan Dean. Looks like you have yourself muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Uh-oh.
Do we hear her?
Yeah.
Joan?
Yes.
There you are. Okay.
Am I on?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I want to say happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody to begin with. And are they wearing their green? I am. I want to say that this was a beautiful community of homes that were probably valued in the 200,000 range. And I don't care what kind of insurance you had, it didn't come close to that figure of replacing your home or building a new home. I think it's a heavy burden on every homeowner, whether they choose to rebuild or sell the property, to come up with money to replace the sewer system. So I feel it's an undue burden on us homeowners. We're really in a tight situation financially, and that's all I can say. It's a tight place that we're in, and I'm hoping that the sewer district can help us out. I thought that FEMA would be the person that would help us out because it was related to the fire. So that's what I have to say. I feel like, consider the heavy burden that we have trying to rebuild a house with what the insurance company gives us. It's really going to be difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw a hand raised from Sharon. You're still muted, sir.
How about now?
Yes, gotcha.
Okay. My question, I believe it is a consensus with all the neighbors, is how come the sewer system didn't decide to go after the developer, because that is the natural course. However, they decided to compensate the expenses from the homeowners who had no part into it.
I can answer that. I can answer that to a certain extent. And obviously, none of us were here when this happened. So we don't know fully what, how it came about, but just going through the files and reading the letters that I do have available, it looks like that there was an attempt to get the developer to correct that. There was letters from BCDSA, which was our organization's name at the time, and from DEQ to the developer saying that it needed to be corrected. And for whatever reason, the issue didn't get forced early on. And beyond that, I honestly don't have a full answer to why. I mean, I can speculate on what the motivations might have been at the time, but I can't say with any certainty exactly what happened there.
But could I ask you a following question? What is your reaction to homeowners being victimized by this situation?
Homeowners being victimized by which?
By the problem between the developer and the county and the sewer system.
Well, I think that's probably something that the board is, that's one of the things that we're looking at today is whether or not, there's anything that what the board can do to assist in that. And I think I've mentioned this several times, ultimately it does fall on, each property owner does have an obligation to have the sewer, built to their property to certain standards. And, obviously that wasn't done by the original developer, but that does not eliminate that requirement, that obligation.
So what I understand, if you can't go after the developer who is the guilty party, you go after the homeowners?
Well, it's, from our perspective, we don't necessarily distinguish between the two. It's the obligation is not from an individual, it's from the property itself. So it's whoever happens to be owning it at the time. That may not be a satisfactory answer to you, but that's, it's kind of the sins of the father being visited on the sons, unfortunately.
But the developer was not my father. He was my enemy, not my father. Quite honestly, I am maybe the only one or maybe some more. I have no insurance. I recently moved to that location. If it comes to the paying, I will not pay. I cannot pay. I don't have money to pay.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. Let's see. Did I see another hand raised? I do have a question in the chat from Beverly Channer, who asks, if a homeowner relies on home insurance to pay this cost, what is the process for sending payment? If the homeowner does not plan to rebuild, but wants to pay the cost prior to selling a lot, what are their options?
That's a good question.
So the way the reimbursement district is typically set up is the assessment is not due until you actually get the permit to connect. So if you sell the lot without rebuilding, there would not be the assessment due until a person actually does rebuild. So we wouldn't have any mechanism for paying that. As far as the insurance side of it, again, it's a fee that we would collect when we issue the permit. So if the insurance company is paying for the permit fee, that's when it would get paid. I hope that answers it. Okay, now we got hands popping up. I've got Julia. Let's start with you. You need to unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, I got you.
Okay. My insurance won't pay until they receive a bill. And I don't know that it has to be after the fact, but they need to have a specific amount, something that looks like a bill or a charge. So I just wondered how the timing of all that is going to work out. And then I read in the newspaper article about lots that won't be buildable or not according to the previous footprint of the house. And I wondered how those homeowners would be compensated for losing their lot.
Okay, I
And
can answer
a
both of
third
those
question.
Okay.
A third question is, with the sewer system going in May to August, will heavy trucks carrying either debris or gravel materials be allowed on the streets during all that time?
Okay, all right, so all right, let's go back. The first question was you need a bill for your insurance company. And so if the board approves the creation of the reimbursement district today, we'll adopt an ordinance that will have an amount that would be due. That is, like I said earlier, that's going to be the maximum amount that you would be charged, and that may be sufficient for the insurance company to look at. Otherwise, the final amount would not be actually determined until the project is complete, because it's going to be based on the actual cost. So we can give you, I mean, we could, you know, you would have the ordinance that establishes the reimbursement district and sets an amount that you would owe. And if that I would hope that would be enough for the insurance company to work off of. But if they need the actual final amount, that would have to wait until the end of the project. The second question, I lost my train of thought. What was the second question?
Compensation of loss for lots of lots.
Oh, yes. Okay, so the part about the unbuildable lots, we're not going with that option. That was a discussion. You know, we looked at the possibility of taking that existing pipe that's in there, cleaning it up, inspecting it, repairing it, getting easements dedicated to protect it, and putting manholes at all of the junction points. And you know, at some level that would be a lower cost option because it's less construction work. But we chose not to go with that for a couple reasons. One of the reasons we chose not to pursue that any further was because it would severely encumber some of the lots. If you had a manhole and on your property, we would have to have a road to get to it. So that would take up a lot of your space that you wouldn't be able to use for a house. And then the other that we chose not to go that direction is we can't really do any of that work until the majority of the lots have been cleared. So we can't even start. So that would probably put the people's reconstruction of their homes back by another year or so before we can actually get all that stuff done. And so that didn't appear to be a real viable option. So the proposal that we're making here would actually put the sewer main out in the street, and then you would have a service lateral up to your property line that you would be able to connect to, and there won't be any easements on anybody's property. There won't be any encumbrances that would restrict where you can build. And then the last question about the trucks moving in and out. You know, obviously we're going to be, if we're out there working and laying sewer pipe, you know, we're going to take up a portion of the road while we're doing that work, but it should not limit or restrict any of the other work that's going to be going on at the same time. It's going to be a busy, I mean, it's a busy place right now, and it's going to stay that busy for a while. But you know, we should be able to work around all the people that are out there building and doing the cleanup, and they should be able to work around us without too much difficulty. Did I get your questions? Okay, I have a hand up of Susan Wrench.
Hi, I'm Susan Wrench at 268 Christopher Way. I agree that this needs to be done. I kind of appalled that we didn't know any of this when we bought lots. None of the homeowners were aware of the problems or difficulties that might come. I also just want to emphasize that we are a senior community. Many people in their 70s, 80s, even in their 90s, we have a limited income. We're not like a community has a potential for their income to go up, pay more. What we have is what we have, and the value is decreasing every day of what we have. This has been a devastating loss. Many people, well, I think most, as Joan said, are not able to even recoup their loss from their insurances. I think there's enough ageism in society. I think we should be helping our elders, and I really feel and appeal to you to help this community. There's not any other community except for maybe one in Ashland, and well, there's nothing else in Talent. We should, the society should, the city should, the government should be assisting our elders, our community, to do this. So whatever you can do to help, because our insurance is not going to be covering all of this, even if we do have some insurance, would be greatly appreciated. That's all I have to say.
Okay, I have a hand up from Michael O'Malley.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to address the three questions that you posed at the beginning that the board will be considering. First of all, I'd like to thank the board for doing what you do. You know, it's a nice thing that you do. On, I don't know if it's volunteer or not, but I appreciate the work. And first of all, as to whether to do it, I think we should do it. And no doubt. My wife and I bought our house in April of 20 and plan to live in it, 329 Quail. But you know, obviously it burns. So, but our plan is to live there and retire there. And so how costs will be allocated should be a combination of FEMA, any other grants that you might be able to get, along with if it's necessary to tithe individual homeowners, then so be it. But I would echo my other homeowners that it's going to be difficult, all of us on fixed incomes, to do that. As far as will the board contribute, I would ask you to consider as well. None of us knew this when we bought the house. It wasn't in the title. Nobody knew anything about this problem. There were shady deals done in the 90s with regard to building of this property. And we would just ask you to consider that, and to, if it's possible, to contribute in any way the board can contribute to the deferral of these costs for homeowners. We'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. One person asked on the chat to talk about financing options. And so I did address that in the memo I sent to the board, and I did hopefully got distributed to some folks out there. What Rogue Valley Sewer has right now on our books is for a project like this, we would offer financing for up to a 20-year term. Our code specifies that the interest rate on that is prime plus 2%, which right now would be about 500, not 500, I think it's 5.25% of interest rate is what, that's written into our code right now. That's something that we have the ability to at any time. We also have provisions that allow for deferral of fees. And with a deferral, typically what that does is that you would not be obligated to pay anything at this point. But when the property sells, changes hands, then it would become due and payable. And typically the interest rate would apply to the deferred amount. The things that kind of go beyond, and those are two things that are built into our code that, you know, anybody on any project really is eligible for. The things that would go beyond that the board may consider, one is making changes to the interest rate that would be imposed to make it more favorable. They do have that option, you know, that level of discretion. And they have a level of discretion about whether or not they would want to just contribute an amount to the project, either as a percentage of the project or a total amount or a cap or anything like that. So those are things that, you know, once we close the hearing, that's going to be part of the board's discussion about, you know, how they want to move forward on that. Okay, is there a hand? There is a hand somewhere. Oh no, that's not a hand. I see it, it says one under it, but that's in case I want to raise my hand. There we go, Bruce Perkins.
Hi. I think we all agree that the developer was responsible, but we don't know how to go after them because they're not around anymore. Has it been determined that the City of Talent holds any responsibility for the inadequate construction of the sewer?
That I don't know. I mean, it's I believe that the sewer was constructed under supposedly under the inspection of the city, but I don't have anything to verify that. Like I said, it was designed and built initially as a mobile home park sewer, which would have been, you know, the city's inspectors would be the ones charged with that. But whether or not they actually did or not, I don't know.
Would it be possible to have an attorney potentially sue the City of Talent for the entire cost of the rebuild of the sewer?
It would be possible. Whether or not they would be successful, I don't know. I'm not an attorney. But I did, after this town hall meeting we had a couple months ago, I did have a discussion with our attorney about, you know, the likelihood of success of something like that. And he didn't think that it was worth the effort. So, but that's just one attorney's opinion. I mean, there may be others that have a different opinion.
Have any attorneys stepped up to help us in this situation that the board is aware of?
No one's contacted me.
So what's the downside of having an attorney just look into the possibility of holding the City of Talent responsible for the entire cost of rebuilding the sewer? Is there a downside to pursuing that?
On whose part? For us to do that, or for?
Yes, well, not for Rogue Valley Sewer Services, but for the HOA, the board, HOA board, to sue the city for the entire cost, since they're culpable.
I would, yeah. I mean, I guess, you know, you're somewhat asking for legal advice, which I'm not qualified to give. And I would probably kick that back to the HOA, and if they have an attorney to make that consultation with their own attorney.
Yeah, I understand you can't give legal advice, but I'm just wondering if the board could reach out to attorneys for that advice and pursue that on behalf of those of us who are apparently stuck with the bill.
You're referring to the HOA board, right?
I think the HOA board is the one who would have to file suit if somebody else is
Yeah.
responsible, but I don't know. Maybe somebody on the board could address that question. Is it possible for the board to sue the city of Talent for the entire cost of the rebuild? Since they're responsible, ultimately, they signed off on it.
Do we have anybody from the board, the HOA board?
Yeah. Do you have anybody from your HOA on this phone call right now? From your HOA board?
Yeah, there are several board members who identified themselves at the beginning. I wonder if any of them could address my question. Can we pursue an attorney to sue the city on behalf of the homeowners? Has it
Okay,
even been
and,
discussed at a board meeting?
Again, like Carl said, we cannot give any legal advice at all. It would be up to your homeowners association board whether they wanted to pursue that or not.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. But the board members that identified here are RVSS board members.
Right, yeah, I'm not asking, I know RVSS can't sue the city of Talent on our behalf, but I'm thinking that the homeowners association can in fact sue the city of Talent, but I'm not sure. And I don't know if that's even been pursued during board meetings where they've discussed how to deal with this issue. To hire an attorney and go after the city and let them pay the cost. Has that been discussed at any board meetings, board members?
We are getting a little bit off topic right now, but
Yeah.
I see that I got his hand up, so maybe he can address that. You're muted right now, Jerry.
Yeah, our board is pursuing that, Bruce, at this point in time. We were going to talk about that tomorrow night.
Oh, okay, great.
Tomorrow. Okay, so we don't take the time here.
Okay, then I'll just drop the subject for now. Thank you.
Yeah, because we are looking into that.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yes.
Okay, I have a text message from Dan whose screen's not working, but he's trying to raise his hand. Is he still on there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you, yes.
Yeah. Camera worked 2 days ago. So anyway, the downside of suing, I would just like to add, of course, is the cost. And it could get quite extensive. And that would be a big decision that would have to be made. You know, the cost of hiring attorneys with questionable success. But that would be a decision to be made. I'd just like to reiterate, I think it was Susan maybe that indicated about, you know, the people who are going to be held responsible and have to pay for this problem right now is the lot owners when they reconnect. And all those people are elderly, mostly retired, and fixed income. And some of them had not great insurance. So, so it's going to be a real burden for a lot of people. I just hope the board will keep that in mind and do the best they can. The RVSS board will do the best they can to come up with sharing the cost here. I think it's the right thing to do since BCVSA, I think it was, your predecessor organization was at least partly responsible and maybe culpable for the mistakes that were made by allowing undersized piping to be accepted and in use. So please, we're pleading with you to do the best you can to help with this situation. And perhaps the board could also put in some pressure on FEMA to help. I know there's some grants available, or supposedly grants available, that could help with this from FEMA. And also, one thought I had is if someone sells their lot and and they have a deferral of the $12,000 hookup fee, I think it's incumbent on all of us somehow to make sure that the new owners, whoever would purchase the lot or purchase a house after the lot was built and not hooked up, that they are notified that this is something that's over their head. And that's probably the responsibility of realtors and the responsibility of trust title companies. But as we've found out, title companies don't always do their job 100% perfectly. So anyway, that's all I had to say.
Yeah, I will say that if there is a deferred fee, part of the deferral agreement does include us putting a lien on the property, so it should show up in any title report. But like you said, title reports are not flawless. Okay, I've got a hand up from Michael O'Malley.
No, I had my questions answered. Thank you.
Okay, all right, I'll lower your hand. Julia?
Yes, if things don't get recorded, then the title company does not have access to them. And I just would also like to tell everybody that the developers are still around. They were from Roseburg, and there's one still there in Roseburg, and the other one has moved to Arizona, but we have addresses on them.
Okay. I have a hand up, Jerry?
There you go. One thing I would just like to, as a board member, I'd like to ask the RVSS board, put yourself in our shoes, when you're making this decision. If you were one of us and what you have to be facing here, just take that into consideration and think about how you would like it to be handled as you're dealing with this problem. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question on the chat that says, will the board please make a guide or plan for homeowners who want to sell their lots and want to pay before selling? Who is the contact person if we have follow-ups? Questions. A guide for homeowners who want to sell their lots and want to pay before selling. That's something that we can look into. Like I said, the amount can't be set until the project is complete. So that, what the board will hopefully approve today will set the maximum amount. And so we can, I'm sure we could set up a process where if that got paid and then the total amount came in lower, we would refund the difference. So we can probably work on developing that. And as far as the contact person, that would typically be me. My name's Carl Tappert. My email address is ctappert@rvss.us. You can find me on our website. Our phone number here is 541-664-6300. I'll write all that in the chat message so you can see it. Okay, was there another question? There's another one, Mary Robson.
Yes, here I am. Whether we're rebuilding or we are planning to sell, do I understand that it is absolutely the best thing to put in the new sewer system, not even contemplate the old? And in doing that, we would be current. It would add to the value of our property. And it would also then meet everything that Talents also requires of a sewer system. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
My other comment is I lived there for 15 years and we were part of a second phase. The first phase had a lot of things put in, but has it been determined absolutely that there's no sewer running along Oak Valley Drive and that section that is newer than the old sewer system that was put in for the mobile homes?
That can be connected to?
No, that we are connected to as part of the second phase that was started in 2004, I believe.
Right. So I mean, there is a little bit of areas that have public sewer available to them, kind of at the north end on Quail Circle and kind of on the periphery that are able to connect directly to a main line that's on the outside of the project of the subdivision. But everything within the subdivision, you know, it's not available to them.
Yeah, I saw the map that you had put out at your first meeting. Yeah, that's all been established and there's no other possibility.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. I had hopes.
Okay, there is a representative from FEMA on the call. AJ is here, and she might be able to address kind of where FEMA is with the project right now.
Sure, thanks, Carl. So as far as what FEMA can and cannot do, here would be the scenario. For individual assistance, FEMA could possibly help each homeowner with that $12,000 cost. The questions that we have from legal and our policy folks is, one, do we have something in writing that says that it is the homeowner's responsibility to incur this cost and to pay it up front? Because if it is a city responsibility, then we have to go to public assistance and individual assistance can't help. But if it's the responsibility of the homeowner, we might be able to help with that. Carl did supply the rough estimate for us to be able to go over and look. And we had, not only do we have the question of, and need it in writing that it's the responsibility of each homeowner and what that breakdown of that cost would be, but there are other things in the estimate that we are wondering, is that going to be the responsibility of RVSS or the responsibility of the homeowner? And that includes talking about the manhole covers or other elements that aren't necessarily going to be on each person's property, but are you guys going to have to incur that cost as well? Or is that something that the board is willing to pick up or RVSS is willing to pick up? So those are some of the questions that FEMA has that we need to have answered before we can kind of think about moving forward. Most of you guys have already registered with FEMA. We've looked up the cases. We also understand that insurance usually does not cover well or septic or sewer systems at all. So most likely your insurance did not cover it to begin with. And we understand that there needs to be upgrades to be able to support the subdivision because it was originally a mobile home park sewer system. So upgrades can possibly be considered by FEMA because it's not up to code, but we need a couple of those questions answered first before we can kind of give a definitive yes or no, we would be able to help.
Okay, thank you. And so that's kind of a parallel process that's happening with all the other stuff that we're doing. And you know, we don't expect final answers from FEMA until sometime in the future when we're already moving on the project. Okay, any other comments? Let's see. Messages here. Why did you just add sewers near the pond? I'm not sure what that question is. Sharon Douglas had a question, why did we just add sewers near the pond? And I'm not certain what she's referring to on that.
Carl, I think she might be referring to the interceptor that runs parallel to the pond.
Okay,
That the handful of houses are already connected to are not subject to the reimbursement district.
is Sharon here, okay. And then, Julia mentioned that the prior good system was put in 1970 and is what shows up on the title report. And that's probably referring to the interceptor trunk line, which runs along the east side of the subdivision. That was one of the original trunks that was built to serve the city of Talent. And there are a handful of homes along that stretch that are currently connected or that were connected to that trunk line. And those wouldn't change. They would still remain connected there. Okay. I don't see any other hands up. Are there any other comments to be made? Oh, Charlene, you're waving your hand, or is that?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I would just like to call out, great, thanks. I'd just like to call out that we know there's a precedent for the Rogue Valley sewer system to help owners that need to meet code requirements, and that we would hope that the Rogue Valley sewer system would find it in your hearts to pay for a good proportion of the cost for us. As stated before, we were unwitting victims, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Do we have anyone else?
Yes, Sharon.
Yes, is my mic open?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, I also put it on the notes, hoping that you can read them so I don't have to come on the line again. My question is, was there any reason that sewer system did not or would not attempt to collect the money from the City of Talent? City of Talent, it was part of the problem to the issue that we are facing right now. Letting them just skip free is, I don't see is a justified situation. Is anybody going to pursue the wrongdoing of the city by issuing permit to the under the standard sewer system, or we just gonna wait for another turn?
I don't know that I necessarily have an answer to that question right now. Like I said, I did consult with our attorney about the potential liability of the city, and the likely success of collecting, even if you did prove liability. And the advice I got back was that it was not worth doing. But certainly that's something that could be looked at again.
And that would totally be up to your homeowners association. We could not do that. Your homeowners association would have to go with that.
Is that by law? Is it by the regulation? Is it by choice that the sewer system cannot pursue the responsibility of the city by issuing permit to the developer?
Well, like I said, I mean, it is a question that I posed to our attorney. And, you know, we typically want to rely on the legal advice that we're paying for. And, you know, if he's telling us that that's not, you know, the likelihood of success is low, you know, then it's probably not worth pursuing.
So there is a way or revenue to consider that, however, it was by choice, which was not considered.
Can you say that again?
I am asking, did the sewer system had a way to approach legally to the city of Talent, or because there is no legal revenue to pursue that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, you know, you're asking, you know, legal questions that we're not necessarily, you know, qualified to fully answer that. You know, and I'll say again, you know, it is a question that we did pose to our attorney, and you know, we would be following his advice on this.
Okay.
Right. Do we have any other
Yeah, I
questions?
got Joan, Dean. Doesn't say she's muted, but I can't hear anything.
Yeah. No, she's, okay. We can't hear you, Joe.
Should you turn up her volume maybe?
Hear me? No?
Now we can, yes.
Okay. I just have a question. At the very beginning, there was a breakdown of cost of the sewer work and actually the cost that it would be to connect to the sewer for a homeowner that was buying. Was I correct in saying that there was an initial cost for construction, and then there was a separate cost that it would cost each homeowner to connect to the sewer?
I don't know that we gave a breakdown on that. You know, there would be cost, you know, the project that we're proposing would bring the service lateral up to the property line. And then when you built your house, you would have to extend the pipe from where we ended it to the house. And there would be some expense with that, but that's not something that, I don't think I gave a breakdown on what that cost would be.
So the cost we're talking about is for the construction alone.
Oh, we lost you again.
House is built, there would be an additional construction fee to connect to the main line.
Right, it wouldn't be a fee that we would charge. It would be a fee, it would be a cost that your contractor, whoever was building the house, they would incur that, you know, when they made that final connection, that last 30 feet or whatever it was. So
Okay, so it's not under the street. It's not under, it would be under the street to the sewer line?
There would be no work, the project that we're proposing would put the main line in the street, and it would bring a service lateral up to your property line. And so you wouldn't have to go out into the street or anything on that. It was just connecting at the pipe at the end of it and bringing it up to your house.
Thank you. I needed that clarification. Thank you.
Okay. I think she understood, but I didn't hear
Yeah.
her. Okay.
She said thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions before I end the public hearing? See anything else, Carl?
I don't see any more. I think we've got it all.
Make sure.
Oh, I got one more. Got a hand up again. Okay.
Just a quick question. When will we know what the decision is made and, you know, the initial cost to us?
Hopefully today. I mean, that's on our agenda to discuss this today. So we, you know, the board will be discussing it, and if they make the decision, we'll know.
And then how will we be notified?
Well, I'll send out emails to everyone that I have an email for, and you're more than welcome to stay here for, you know, another period of time while they discuss it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Thank you all for coming. I'm gonna close the public comments. If you have regarding this matter, and we're gonna go into our regular meeting. So the public hearing is now closed.
All right.
People should know what.
So, you know, we have the project description. We have that already.
No, see, I think if you sit and talk first,
and hopefully everyone got a chance to look at the memo I sent out related to possibility of RVSS contributing to the project. And just to kind of go over that briefly, I did try to identify as best as I could, you know, similar types of situations that we've faced in the past. And then the first one I identified was a shared service lateral, which is something that is fairly common. Back, you know, prior to the 1970s era and before, it was pretty common when people were building sewers that they would run a single service line and then split it to share two adjacent houses. That's not allowed by plumbing code. I imagine it was at some point, but I'm not positive. It was a long time ago. We specifically say in our code that we don't accept any responsibility for any of these shared service lines. What we do, and we've done this frequently, is if we're rehabilitating a main line that has a bunch of shared service lines on it, we'll build two services. And depending on where they come apart, we'll either reconnect them if they're in the right of way, or we'll just stub one up and put a cap on it if it's not in the right of way. And we've done that dozens of times. Lots of projects that we do, you know, when we're doing rehabilitation work, involve shared sewers, and we do that separation. We don't put any kind of fee or assessment on the affected property owners for that. So that's one somewhat similar situation.
This is a little bit different, but yeah.
Yeah, everything's going to be a little bit different, but there are some similarities. Another one is something that we call them spaghetti lines, and that's not the official term of it, but you see in a lot of situations, and we find this a lot, particularly in places where we've recently annexed. Shady Cove has a handful of them. I mean, we found them in Jacksonville, you know, other places. And what seems to happen is a person wants to build a house, they want to connect to the sewer's 500 feet away, 300 feet away, whatever it is. And the city would allow them to build a 4-inch service lateral all the way up the street to connect their house. Again, that doesn't meet standards, but you know, it's one of those things that happens. You know, the homeowner comes in and says, how can you make me pay for a main line? The public works director says, you're right, that's too much. Just build a service line, we'll figure it out later. So they do that, and then the guy across the street does the same thing, and then the guy down the street does this, and then you've got a whole bundle of service lines running up a street. So we find that in places, and our response typically is to go in and build a main line and connect everyone properly. And again, that's something that we do, that we have done, and we've never charged any assessment on the property owners that are affected by that. So that's another similar situation. And then the last one that I wanted to highlight is actually a similar type of development here in Central Point with the Meadows. one was also designed and built initially as a mobile home park, and at some point converted into a subdivision. So it's very, very similar. I think there was a little bit of a longer time period in between when it was built and when it was converted. This happened in the 80s, so it was when the system was under the jurisdiction of Central Point, so I don't know exactly what process went through there. But it is a very, very similar situation. We've never accepted responsibility for the maintenance. The community itself has to do any kind of maintenance they have within the system. And they're kind of in the same position that Oak Valley was a year ago, before the fire. There is one difference, a little bit, is that in the Meadows, they had a pump station that was giving them troubles, and they actually approached us and asked if we would take responsibility for maintaining the pump station. And ultimately, we agreed to do that on the condition that they rebuild it to public sewer standards, and they did that. They spent, $100,000 from their maintenance fund to rebuild the pump station, to build it to our standards, and then we accepted that as a public sewer. And I believe there's also some 8-inch pipe within the park. They dedicated easements for that, and we accepted that as well. But they still have the same stuff, the 6-inch and 4-inch lines behind the houses that we don't. So the Meadows is a very, very similar situation. I don't know of any others, but it's possible there might be something else out there. And that's one thing for the board to consider, is that, a decision that we make today, in response to what's happening in Oak Valley, would probably also be a decision that we'd be making for the future when something happens in the Meadows, if something like that were to happen. So that's the types of situations that we have out there that might be similar. I also want to highlight, I don't know if I put this in the memo or not, I think I did. We do have a provision for homeowners who want to replace their service lines to incentivize them to do that, because we recognize that a bad or a failing service line has an impact on the system as a whole. If a homeowner comes to us and wants to replace their entire service line from their house to the main, we would reimburse them for 1/3 of that cost. And that's something that we do regularly, probably, 5 to 10 times a year, we'll have someone come in and take advantage of that program. So it is something that we do normally. I guess a couple of the differences between all of those things and what we have in Oak Valley is, in Oak Valley, it was as soon as that thing was built, we highlighted it and said, this is not right, this isn't okay, it needs to get fixed, and it didn't. And like I said, we can speculate on, what happened and why it didn't, and it's understandable. Just look at what we're dealing with right now, and how disruptive it is to try to fix a system like this. Imagine doing this if all the houses are still there. I mean, it's virtually impossible. So I understand why when the developer initially resisted doing anything to correct it, why it wasn't pushed further, because it would have been hugely disruptive at the time, and it wasn't something that anyone wanted to take advantage of. But again, the difference between the other things, like I talked about, the shared services and things like that, is those are all typically done legitimately when they're done. And with Oak Valley, it wasn't legitimate when it was done the first time. And so I think there is a little bit of a difference there. And I recognize that obviously, nobody involved with it, no one who was responsible for it when it happened is involved with it now, and everyone's fresh and new. And so it is a tough approach to argue that you're still responsible for it, even though you had nothing to do with it. It's just the luck of the draw, you happen to buy the wrong lot. That's, I understand that part. So with that as background, I guess, I mean, a couple of the options that I threw out there as ways that the board could approach this. And, the first one I put in there is what happens if we simply do nothing? And that is an option that I would not recommend. But, right now, there is no public sewer within that subdivision. And if someone wants to rebuild their house, we can't issue them a permit. They're not going to be able to take occupancy of their house because there's no way to connect to a sewer right now. So, we could theoretically say, okay, homeowners association, this is your baby, you deal with it, and let them struggle with it. I think that's a terrible policy, but that is a potential option. And I know early on a lot of people ask, well, why can't we just do what we did before? You can't do what you did before because what you did before wasn't legal, and it's not in a condition right now where it's even usable. So I just throw that out there just as kind of the absurd extremity on one end of the situation. We mentioned early on about the possibility of financing, and our code does specifically allow financing, and we do identify what the interest rate would be, which, like I said, is prime plus 2. The board has discretion in that. That is a discretionary action. The board could choose to reduce or eliminate that insurance rate. And just as an example, if we finance the entire $12,000 for 20 years at the 5.25%, a person would be expected to pay about $80 a month additional on their sewer for the financing. If you drop that interest rate down to 0, that lowers it to 50. So it's less, but that is a potential option. Another option is on the deferral. We do allow deferrals, and a deferral could, put off their obligation to pay for, any length of time. So people could rebuild without having that burden on them, and it would be something that we would end up collecting when they decided to sell the property, sell the house. So it doesn't directly impact the people right now, but it would impact them on the back end, when they sold the house, that would affect their sales price. That's an option. And we talked early on about whether or not insurance covers any of this. And you've seen from the comments that we've gotten, some people say yes, insurance company, I just need a bill and we got it covered. Other people saying, I got nothing, they're not going to touch it. So that's really it. I don't think that's something that we want to try to get involved with, is having people prove whether or not they have insurance and whether or not it covers it. I think that's more than I think we can realistically try to address. So I don't know that we should try to approach it that way. We did have a little bit of a discussion with FEMA, and that's still up in the air. We don't know if they're going to approve anything, if they're going to approve it, how much they're going to approve it. If they did, it would all be directly to the individuals. It wouldn't come to us. So again, we wouldn't know whether or not FEMA is giving money. I mean, how much a person's eligible for. So again, I don't know that I want that to necessarily be part of our decision-making process, because it could happen, it could not, we don't know.
Carl, let me make a suggestion.
Okay.
Because you've already said that we have to do something. We can't just let it go. So why don't we go ahead and make a motion for the ordinance and see where that goes. And then after what we decide on the ordinance, then we can get down to the more nitty-gritty stuff.
Okay.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
And because then we can start, because the ordinance doesn't say anything about the financing. It just says how much it's going to cost and how much it would be for each individual.
Right.
So let's go ahead and take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
and then we can move on from there.
Okay, yeah, they're two separate decisions, so that makes sense, yeah.
Okay? So
How many
does-
properties are we talking about?
It's 65 homes within the subdivision, and there's 12 that are in the subdivision that have the ability to reconnect to already existing public sewer mains, so they would not be part of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Carl, isn't one of those a homeowners association building also?
Yeah, that one would be part of the project. They would have to be part of it.
Yeah, but
That's the
it's separate, but whatever we collect would be from the homeowners association. They'd have to deal with collecting the money as opposed to all the individual homes. So it's a little bit of a nuance there. We need to be associated.
Right.
that would come out of that.
Because it'll affect everybody for that particular property in some way.
Yeah, so they'll be paying a portion of that connection fee separate from the connection fee we're connecting.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion for the ordinance.
I'll so move. Did you pick me up, Carl? I move.
Yeah, I got you, Wayne.
Jim Lewis seconds.
Thank you, Jim. Roll call, please, Joan.
Wayne Brown,
Before you do roll call, will you define what we just not?
Okay, so this is the ordinance that would create the Oak Valley Subdivision Sewer Reimbursement District. It defines the project to construct the sewer main, to reconnect all of its houses. It defines the 65 lots that would be affected by that and assessed it, and it sets the maximum assessment for each lot at $12,085.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, Mike. No, go ahead, Joan.
Wayne Brown,
Yes.
Kay Harrison,
Yes.
Mike Parker,
Yes.
Jim Lewis,
Yes.
Jim Snyder.
Affirmative.
Okay, the ordinance has passed. Thank you all. Now we can get down to the nitty-gritty and talking about the financing part.
Right. So, I kind of laid out, options that you would have with interest rates, options that we have with deferrals. And then really the last thing that this board would have the option to do is to either is to subsidize it in some way, whether saying that we would pay X percentage of the total cost, we would pay X number of dollars for the project, we would limit each individual. We could do it several different ways. I mean, we could say we want to put a cap on the amount that anybody has to pay, and we would pick up everything above that. We would say we would put a cap on the amount we would contribute, and then the homeowners have to pick up the rest of it. Or we could make it a percent. I mean, or like I said, it's entirely discretionary. So the board can choose however they want to go with something like that. I guess a couple of other highlights that I want to point out. We just completed a project on Rapp Road where there was a 6-inch line running through some people's backyards. Again, this was stuff that was built 50, 60 years ago, and we fixed that, put it all out in the front. We did that just as a matter of course, as part of our normal capital planning. We just issued a contract and started construction recently for a project on Gagnes, where, again, because the houses have all been destroyed, we have the opportunity to reconnect stuff out to the front and also get rid of a creek crossing at the same time. So these types of projects we do, there is a fair amount of backyard sewer mains within our district, and they're a nightmare. We hate them. We try to get rid of them whenever we can. The really biggest challenge is in most cases, they're there for a reason. They're there because the ground slopes that direction or whatever. And trying to turn them around involves not only rebuilding a main line, but it also involves rebuilding the plumbing underneath someone's house. And the fire, as bad as it was, does offer the opportunity to avoid that part of it. So we have taken some advantage of that to fix the main line. So I just want to throw that out there as well, is that, you know, if this was a subdivision that was legitimately built and permitted and everything built that way, we would probably do this project without going through this process. Or we would probably just do it. But, you know, the thing that sets this apart is that it was not built legitimately in the first place.
And that, and I understand that. This was like a double whammy for these folks. And I understand that. And I understand a lot of the things that we do to make our system, throughout our system, a really good system, so we can manage it well and keep our costs down. Those things are really important. It's really important to be part of our community and to be part of, because we're talking individuals, we're talking about people. And I know I could be in the same circumstances because of where I live. So I understand that part. But we also have a financial responsibility to this district in how we handle the funding on this. So I want to hear from the rest of the board members what they think on how we should handle this. Jim?
I guess I'll go ahead and start then. I got elected to the board not quite 2 years ago. And I had to ask myself, why am I doing this? And I look at it, I have a fiduciary duty once I'm on board, and that's to look after the interests of all the people who are paying customers, rate paying customers within RVSS. And I have to look at it for both today, which is immediate, and also in the distant future. And the distant future part for that, as we're talking about it here, is 50 to even 100 years from now, because some of these houses, when they get rebuilt, are going to be around for a long time. And it tells me we absolutely need to have the right stuff in the ground, not just to take care of today's people, but all the people and the generations that go to own that house after you do. RVSS, in my mind, is pretty much like a commercial company in a certain aspect, in that we collect money from people to do things, and we have appropriations of how we're going to spend that. So we're a collection agency and a disbursement agency. And that's very fundamentally what most companies do. For me, the problem statement has already been well laid out by Carl, that it's the improper construction of sewer lines in that area that we really have to deal with. So I'm looking at how do we make sure that the people today are taken care of, but we're also taking care of the people yet unborn that are going to come into the community, but also are going to be part of our RVSS rate paying structure. So I look at time value of money, which is something we've never discussed here, but I think at some point in the distant past, it must have been discussed before my time because of the interest rates we have. And that is, if we take a time payment and inflation kicks in, it's low right now, but I lived in the days when mortgage payments were 17.5%. So I know it can get worse, and it's going to, believe me. The money we get repaid further downstream has less purchasing power than it does today. So if you look at it in terms of monetary units, you know, $80 this week, $80 next week, $80 next week. At some point 10 years from now, that $80 is going to pay about $40 worth of stuff. So my fiduciary duty to the longer term people, that I make sure we keep ourselves whole by having at least an adjustment for the amount that's being paid in under a payment plan. 5.25% currently, but if we're talking about prime, I don't know what the prime is going to be in the future. Right now, 5.25. I don't know necessarily that we need to injure the people who are here today by charging something above prime. I think we can allow to go to 2%, but it can be 0. So I'm kind of inclined to go 0. But I think without the prime adjustment, we're really short-circuiting our future revenues coming in to pay for the projects we're going to have to do, because we're getting less value out of the money. So for me, prime plus 0 might be more acceptable to me anyway. But I have to warn anybody that decides to take a payment plan is at some point down the stream, that 5 1/4 could be a lot bigger, and the amount they'll be paying each month will be larger. One of the things that we haven't talked about in this system yet that Carl came up with was a potential, like when you buy a car, a down payment for a house. Could people desire, if they choose to, make a lump sum payment on the first part of 10%, 20%, whatever the number works out, so that they can reduce the amount of principal they owe, so that when the inflation kicks in, it's not as onerous downstream. So I think that might be a consideration too, is not mandating necessarily, but allowing a lump sum payment either initially or periodically, just to keep the amount of interest that's paid down later on. One of the things that's a little difficult for me to deal with right now, because I just don't have the information on it, is the kinds of people that we have in the community. And by that, I'm talking about people who are completely insured for all the costs associated with whatever this bill turns out to be covered by insurance, and tend to rebuild. And then there's those that are fully covered that are not going to rebuild. And how do we handle the difference there? There's also those who we haven't talked about, is some people have some insurance that will cover some portion of it, but not all of it. So how do we handle those people when they rebuild, when some of those people may choose not to rebuild either? So you have those two categories going on. And then we have the larger group of people, I believe larger, I don't know for sure, that do not have insurance. Some of those will rebuild and some will not. So all those different categories have different kinds of structures that could be put in as to how we deal with how we're going to do this. So I just throw that out as a potential talk point. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do have that one structure that belongs to the HOA that we really have to help the people think through, because they're not only going to pay for their own building, but they're going to have to chip in for that one. And how do we handle that one? You know, demand all the money up front, spread it over 10, 20 years. How do we do that? So that's a separate discussion for me. What I think we're missing here that I don't know how to go about getting it unless the HOA already has the data or can provide most of it, is a list of the lots that are fully insured, lots that are partially insured and for how much, and lots that are uninsured completely for these costs. And then the subset of that is who's going to rebuild and who's going to sell. So for me, that's kind of the vision that I see. Okay, that's enough for me.
Thanks, Jim. Jim, I think we really need to look at this as individual lots and not in terms of who has insurance and who doesn't have insurance. Because we're dealing with the lots. We're dealing with providing a service back to those individual lots and doing it correctly. So the insurance is up to the homeowners. That's theirs. Our part is to provide the service. So the part of me that actually has a beating heart wants to look at the other part, but the other part of me that is, you know, I have to be practical. We have to look at just the lots and how these impact the lots, and we're providing a service to those lots so these folks can rebuild. And that's what we're looking at. Okay, any other input?
I think, Jim, you're muted still. I think he was trying to talk.
Well, if you're looking for this, Jim, what I want to do is, to the maximum extent possible, minimize the impact on these property owners. They were, if not victims, at least unwitting purchasers at some time, and through no fault of their own, have got to face this reconstruction. So if Carl, you could synthesize the path that gives them the best relief and our most inclusive contribution, that would be helpful to me.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're really just pick a number. You know, I mean, you know, the board, you do have discretion to say, you know, let's just foot the bill and pay the whole thing. You know, you could pick a number and say, let's pay half, let's pay a third, let's pay a quarter. It's, you know, I mean, the numbers that you're looking at, like I said, you know, the total project cost estimate is about $750,000. $785,000, I'm sorry. So, you know, if you were to say, you know, we're going to pay 30% of that, you know, what does that come to? That's whatever that is, 200 and some thousand.
Right.
You know, so that, I mean, so really, I mean, that's what that's what that just all boils down to is, you know, how much do we think is appropriate to put into something like that? You know, I will say, you know, a couple things that, you know, we're probably going to discuss later in this meeting. You know, on our capital budget, you know, because of the fire, we have spent already about $850,000 on recovery efforts. And I'm hoping that we're going to get maybe about 500 of that back from FEMA. You know, but again, until the money's in the bank, you know, we don't know for sure that it's going to get there. We've done a couple of other, you know, there's a couple of other projects that we've done in response to the fire, like the Rap Road and the Gang, which is another $300,000 or $400,000 that we're going to be spending on that. So by the time this is over, if you add up all these projects that we're doing, plus all the recovery work that we've done, we're going to spend about $2 million on fire efforts. You know, there's a chance we might have to do a supplemental budget on our capital depending on the timing, but you know, we do have the reserves available to do all of this work that we're talking about. You know, another thing just to bring up is, you know, when we get to the point is I am going to be recommending a rate increase for next year. From a $21.50 to $23 a month for a house. So that's just something to keep in the back of your head as we're doing this discussion. But I guess the point I want to make there is that, you know, we have already spent an awful lot of money on this fire recovery. We are planning to spend a significant amount more on that. And really, it's just a question of, you know, how we want. You know, how we want to allocate that. If we paid, you know, $500,000 for this site or whatever, just again picking a number, I mean, that's not going to be recovered from FEMA or anyplace else. I mean, that's going to be part of our capital expenditure for the year. And you know, that's, you know, one of the nice things about the way we operate, in that we have a significant portion of our budget goes towards capital improvements, is it does give us a fair amount of flexibility in dealing with issues like this when they arise. So I don't know, does that answer any of your questions? Jim, I kind of got to talking a bit much there.
Well, I had been thinking as this has been progressing and the human side of all this and the hardship that everyone has gone through and will continue to. And it's like, keep it simple, stupid. And I would propose a minimum of sharing 50% of this, what, $12,000 estimate, and then leaving it to the customer to decide how they want to handle their 50%, and not try to get so complicated that they have to do this and that and all that, but following the rules we already have set up of how they pay it, if they want to pay it, if they want to defer it. If you all think 50% is too much or too little, then voice that. But I feel we need to donate, contribute as much as we humanly feel is livable. And we're putting them in an unlivable situation if we don't help when we have the means to help. Excuse my emotion.
Like, that's why we like you.
Now, let me just ask a question. If we did something, no matter whether it's 1% or 100%, how does that affect us in trying to recoup the individual owners? I mean, recouping anything from FEMA. I don't see the FEMA person still on the note here. Might be someplace. But Carl, do you think that if we did 30% or 50%, whatever it is, and that's what the homeowners have to pay, and FEMA does decide to pay, that's all they're going to get, so they have less reimbursement coming to us? I mean, how does our decision affect what FEMA might eventually pay that will come back to us? The question.
My understanding of the way FEMA process would work is that they have a cap on the amount that they would contribute, or that they would reimburse each individual out there. And if they approve this expense as eligible and it fits under that cap, they would pay it up to whatever their cap would be. So our contribution won't change whether or not they're eligible at all. You know, it would, you know, if they're being responsible for a smaller amount, then the likelihood of that being within their cap is greater. You know, I suppose there's a possibility that there might get money left on the table that there'll be money in their cap that wouldn't get spent, but I think that's probably unlikely. But yeah, like, you know, the decision we make on this, I don't think is going to have an impact on their eligibility for reimbursement through FEMA. And, you know, we're working with FEMA trying to justify whatever we can for them, but, you know, this would certainly, you know, make it easier for them to, whatever they end up getting from FEMA to be within the limits.
So it's 100% unlikely that if they got a certain amount as a homeowners, which is less than the total bill, that we can't collect it from FEMA directly, right?
No, we won't get anything directly from FEMA on this.
No.
Okay.
It goes to the individuals. Again, it goes to the property. So
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Yeah.
Any other discussion, John?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Carl, A, can we withstand a third of the cost, or B, as Michael suggests, 50%, or both?
Or both. So
Well, or either.
83%?
Yeah. No.
I mean, the answer is yes. You know, like I said, you know, we do have a fair amount of reserves, and you know, it has an impact on our capital improvement program. No matter what amount it is, we make decisions every year to set our priorities on what we're going to do for capital improvement. So if we're putting more money into this particular project, then you know that's going to be something that we're not going to spend on another project. But the reality is, you're doing this as a reimbursement district, so we're putting out the full $780,000 no matter what.
Exactly.
And it's just a question of, you know, when it's going to start trickling back in. So realistically, we're taking the hit up front, and you know it'll be, you know, reimbursed over a period of time. But you know, so we'll be able to withstand that without, you know, really significant impact on our. It won't affect our operations at all. It'll just be, you know, decision on how we prioritize capital improvements next year.
Thank you very much.
Okay, do I hear any, of what we would like to do, how much we would like to offer as far as, what we'd like, RVSS to help with, or how we would like the reimburse the district? Do I have any more solidification on that?
Now, let me just throw out an idea. Carl, you said the bill would be about 12,000 and a few dollars. What if we just capped it at 12,000 and then applied some percentage off of that number? I think it makes the math a lot easier, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that's basically what Mike suggested.
Yeah, well, he was going with a percentage. I was just going with, a nice number to cut it off at the top. 12,000 occurs to me to be the right number, and then apply a percentage back from that, just to keep the numbers a lot easier for the accountants to deal with. Any thoughts?
So you're suggesting, like, if rather than set the maximum assessment would be 12,000, we would say it would be 6,000 and just leave it at that?
Well, I'm just saying set 12,000 perhaps as an easy top number. And then if the board decides to cut off a percentage of that, I think the math's a bit easier. 30% or 40% or whatever of 12,000, a lot easier to deal with than 12,080, blah, blah, blah. Makes the bills look a little cleaner to me.
Oh, I see. Well,
no, I think, I understand where you're getting at, Chip, but it might be better if we look at it as a whole instead of the individual, as the whole amount of this is what, 7,700?
785.
Yeah, 785,549. It would be nice to look at that and say, okay, we're gonna split that bill in half. And so the residents, the property owners would be, going to pay half of that, and that would be divided up amongst them. That would change the 1,200. If that's what we wanted to do, then we should go with the full amount.
And keep in mind, the way the process works is when the project is complete, we come back and we do a final ordinance. And that final ordinance actually sets the final assessment, which is based on the construction cost, the actual incurred cost. So
how much of that?
So it's very unlikely to be the exact amount of that. If we go over budget, then that's the amount that the assessment will be. If we come under, then that savings is passed on to the homeowners. So I think if we were going to approach this as a subsidy, I think the best way really would be to either say that we're going to pick up a percentage or we're going to pick up a dollar amount of that total, and then when we do the math at the end, that's when we come up with the final numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay, Wayne.
Yeah.
You wanted to say something?
No, I agree with everything. We need to get this thing resolved.
Okay.
How might we frame a proposal?
So I think what you would do is you would make a motion identifying, what level of support we should do, and I think we would vote on that today, and I can come back next month with actual formal resolution that would encompass what you agreed to today, and we would memorialize that as a resolution.
Well, that's what I'd like to do, is make that proposal. Becoming a partner with the homeowners, in effect, with a contribution of 50% of the total amount will be paid by RVS and 50% by the homeowner in any manner that we normally used for financing, which can be deferred, can be at an interest. I like Jim's idea of the interest rate being prime, period. And that would be my proposal.
I would like to second the motion. Jim Lewis.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Joe, roll call, please.
Wayne
I
Brown,
just want to make sure, Carl, did you accumulate all the wording and verbiage here into something we can actually write down in paper?
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you're good with that?
So,
It may
Yeah,
need a little
definitely.
refining.
Want to make sure he's got it.
anyone who financed it would be eligible for financing at a rate equal to prime.
Right.
Okay.
okay. Wayne Brown,
Yes.
Kay Harrison,
Yes.
Mike Parker,
Yes.
Jim Lewis,
Yes.
Jim Snyder.
Yes.
Okay, well,
Okay.
with that,
So that's passed, and
Yeah. and this price, the design is ready, so we're gonna advertise this for bids, right away, so.
okay, good. The
get
sooner we
moving.
get on that,
Yeah.
the better. And we will,
And
Take
thank
care
you
of
all
that.
for coming to our show.
Good job, guys. Good job.
thank you.
Okay, wow.
Okay, next is, project update.
Thank you.
All right. Can you guys all hear me?
Also, thanks for coming.
Yes,
Can you guys hear me?
yes, we got you.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. All right. So I am not going to talk about any of these that are stagnant. The only thing I'm going to do is bring up the pertinent info, given the time.
You're a good man.
Okay. 140 exit 35 to Blackwell. This project, there's actually some big movement on this one. Gold Hill is just still dragging their feet. They haven't made a decision on their facilities plan, installing a pump station or rehabbing or rebuilding the treatment plant. But this project is bidding shortly, and our time to make a decision with ODOT is pretty much up. And so we discussed internally, and we're going to remove the force main from the ODOT project. It's just too much risk we're incurring. It does not look likely at all that ODOT's going to be Gold Hill is going to be installing the pump station. So it doesn't preclude them from doing it in the future. It's just not as easy of a connection. They just have to run out within ODOT's right of way outside of the roadway or shoulder. So they could still do it if they really wanted to. We're just not going to participate. It's just too much risk. So Arborwood Pump Station, we're off to the races on a design. Hopefully we'll get that completed in the next month or so and have a construction this summer or late spring. Alameda Fire Service Abandonment. The only thing that's going on with this, one of the bigger lots in Talent, FEMA is actually looking at putting in some temporary housing, which just happens to be one of the last locations we need to go in and cap these laterals. I'm working with FEMA to hopefully either cap the laterals or dig and replace the vast majority of the main that's running through that property. So fingers crossed that we can get a deal brokered with FEMA. Gangness Sewer Rehab, that project is under construction and going well. Carl already mentioned that. 140 Central Point Force Main Rehab, that project is in design, done pump station replacement. That project, we're just reviewing the submittal documentation and shop drawings from the contractor at this point. So our consultant's bearing most of the load on that one. And we did, sorry, there was a payment there. We did finally get a revised invoice from the pump manufacturer, which held 10% of the retainage, which we will release upon installation of the pumps. And you can see we paid $365,000 for those pumps. And then if you scroll down, we have, I don't know if you guys can see the map here. This is a new project. If you guys are looking at it, it's Beebe Road, Gebhardt, Hamrick, right down the street. This is a new project that's under design right now. It's a Central Point Force Main rehab project. It's basically realigning a portion of the main to the south and then abandoning a short portion of this. This is just a maintenance nightmare for us. It's an old force main. It has terrible grade, and there's a lot of H2S corrosion on that pipe. Likely what we're going to do is, thank you, Carl. Likely what we're going to do is go ahead and replace that clouded portion. There's a couple bends inside the runs between the manholes. Our guys can't go in there and TV. And so we're going to replace the clouded portion and then realign the portion of the south in red, and then abandon the portion in the middle. This area is getting a ton of attention from developers, so it's likely going to get built out here in the next probably 20 years. So, and that's all I've got for today.
Okay, Jimmy. Stormwater.
Okay, so on my report to you guys, I attached the letter from DEQ that was our, their review of our annual permit, or our annual report to them that was submitted back in December. And they've indicated in their letter that all of our permit requirements are being met and our program is in good standing. So that letter is attached at the end if you haven't had a chance to look at that. The Shadow Creek Estates issue that we have been dealing with the last 2 months with George Cota Homes has been resolved at this point. He did complete the process to terminate that permit. So per your decision at last month's meeting, we will waive the $400 penalty and only apply the $100 fee that is for coming to the board via public hearing. On the fire response, I completed the last sampling of outfalls that we have planned to do for monitoring of water quality following the fire. That was done on March 5th during a storm event. And so at this point, we're working with a group to potentially apply for grant funding to do additional monitoring in the future. But if that does not come to fruition, this would be the end of RVS's water quality monitoring within the Burton area. The Talent Stormwater Master Plan that we had begun, we had signed a contract with the City of Talent back in 2019, basically the end of 2019. And we had started working on this master plan, and we had on our schedule that we were going to spend a significant amount of time on it this fall to complete that. Well, we did not spend any time on it this fall. So we have submitted a amendment to Talent on the schedule that we had in our contract, and we've gotten us a contract extension through December of 2022 for that. The Lagoon Public Access Project, so we already approved the resolution on that. We went through a process to review proposals, and you guys approved the resolution to issue the contract on that. And then I think the last item that I had on here was actually a review of enforcement policy. And I'll keep this pretty brief. Basically, what we have in existence for enforcement policy, we have a escalating enforcement policy, and that is what we are required to have per our stormwater MS4 permit from DEQ. We have to have a policy that has kind of stepwise increasing enforcement measures for people who are in violation of our ordinance. And our code stipulates that we can fine up to $2,000 per day per violation for a violation of our ordinance. However, the standard operating procedure that we have, which is this escalating enforcement policy, stipulates that we will issue a $500 penalty for a willful discharge into the stormwater system and a $250 penalty for an accidental discharge into the stormwater system. Over the years that I've been dealing with this, we have dealt with a lot of discharges into the stormwater system. I think I put in your report over the last 5 years, something like 62 discharges we've dealt with. Of those, only 3 did we actually get to the point where we actually issued a monetary penalty. So what usually ends up happening is we spend a significant amount of time working with the violator to get them into compliance, to clean up the issue, to adopt some modified practices so that they don't have the issue again. And that's where the most of our time gets spent. And so what we would like to ask the board to consider is whether or not you would basically, we want to know whether or not we should go forward and look at revising this enforcement policy that we have that is stipulates these $250 and $500 penalties that are not based on, what the person has done in the past, or there's no regard for, previous history of violations, the type of violation really. DEQ follows, there is a ORS that stipulates how DEQ issues their penalties for violations, same violations that we issue penalties for, but we issue them in our area. And the policy that they follow is very robust, looks at a bunch of different factors that include the economic benefit to the person for not doing the proper discharge, their past history with violations, and a number of other things. Our policy doesn't look at any of that. We just issue this, $500 penalty. The DEQ penalties, their base penalty could be $500, but they can also add up to being significantly more than that. We're not looking to necessarily collect significantly more money, but what we are looking at is if we had a more robust policy, would it in some way abate the amount of time that we spend working with violators to get them into compliance? And so the question, I think, Carl, if you scroll down, I think I have the question on there for the board on your screen. So we're specifically asking the board if you're interested in considering a move to a more structured penalty matrix similar to the DEQ procedure. And that's basically a yes or no for you at this point. And if you are, then we would go back and review and develop something to bring to you in the future.
Okay. So, Jenny, you're trying to look for it as more of a really strong deterrent, so you don't have to spend so much time holding people's hands. Is that correct?
That's the thought. I don't know whether it would actually, I don't know that it will actually pan out that way, but that was the thought, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still going to be a fair amount of hand holding. I think, one of the, there's definitely weaknesses in how we do it right now. I mean, we don't necessarily.
I think we're getting taken advantage of from time to time.
Yeah. And, if someone backs a truck up and dumps a load of septic waste in the river and kills all the fish, for us, that's a $500 penalty. Which is the same as if someone, dumps a can of paint down in a gutter. I mean, yeah. So there's not a whole lot of differentiation, at least on paper, with severity and things like that. So I think what we're looking for is something that would have gradations more specifically tied to specific actions and the impact of those actions, which is what DEQ's process currently does and ours doesn't. So we'd like to beef it up a little bit. It doesn't necessarily have to be, a steeper fine, but I think it's better defined and better tied to the actual actions of the individual and the effects of those actions.
I agree. What do you guys think?
Well, this is Jim Lewis, and I move we authorize staff to proceed in developing a more structured and stringent matrix for enforcement.
I'll second that.
Okay, Jim made the motion and Mike did the second. Roll call, please.
Mike Parker,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Wayne Brown,
Yes.
Jim Lewis,
Yes.
Jim Snyder.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Anything else, Jenny?
That's it.
Okay. Okay, O&M.
All right, hello to all. I'll get through this. Board member once told me to keep it simple, stupid, so I'm going to do just that.
That wasn't you.
It's been business as usual. We have just some lingering stuff in the Almeda fire. Mainly, it's just a trailer park that needs to be cleaned up, and then we'll be done and out of there. But other than that, it's been business as usual. I'd like to acknowledge Carl's detailed work that he conducted in this Oak Valley situation. And I'd like to acknowledge the board for having a heart and showing that we're not a bunch of robots. And nicely done.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a great team that we take example from.
My turn?
Yeah.
Okay, and I am so sorry because I do have like some serious stuff to talk about again.
Let's see how you are. God.
So yeah, most of it we already addressed. I put a lot of information in here about FEMA and about what we were hoping for compensation, that sort of thing. And like I said, we'll see when it comes. The big one is on the rates. We're doing our budget right now, so I do need to get direction from the board on how we're going to proceed with rates. We don't typically approve any rate adjustments until the June meeting, but I do my analysis this time of year, and what I am proposing would be an increase from $21.50 to $23 per month. So it's about a 7% increase total. It's fairly significant, but again, we did not have any rate increase last year. And we highlight again, what our rate is relative to the rest of the world, and our rates are ridiculously low. And I do want to address that a little bit, and say, there's probably a lot of reasons why we're able to do this, but two big reasons. One is that the treatment rates that we pay to City of Medford are extraordinarily low. And those of you that were at the regional committee meeting last time, we had some discussions about that. They're raising their rates by 3%. They didn't talk about this a whole lot, but it's out there. Their new permit is about to get issued. They are going to have significant requirements for nutrient removal, to the point that they're going to have to build whole new treatment processes to meet that. Wow. And we are looking at, over the next few years, big rate increases. And if the rates doubled or even tripled, I would not be surprised. I mean, it's that significant. So that is something that it's definitely in the foreseeable future. Right now, we pay $8.50 a month for treatment, and like I said, that could easily go up to 20. So So we are going to be, that is going to push us closer to what the state average is. State average is about $55 right now, so that pushes us closer. And another thing that I kind of see on the horizon in the not too distant future is, one of the reasons that we are able to keep our rates really low is, we have, I guess what I like to call our culture and our mentality is that of a small organization. And in a small organization, you put a lot of demands on individuals. And we're kind of getting to a point where we're reaching capacity on a lot of them. And I could certainly, so I see that there's going to be pressure in that. And I can easily see us having the need to, for instance, add another GIS person, add another engineer to Nick's staff, add more support for Jenny's staff. I mean, we put a lot on some positions. We could go with 3 inspectors now easily, the way things are. So we are kind of growing to. I mean, we keep on growing, and we keep on. We get all these technological advances, which make everything better, but they also create a lot of demands on our staff. So there is going to be. Our labor costs have always been. Our staff levels have always been very low, and will probably stay that way. But I do see some pressures on that in the future. So. I am asking for approval of a rate increase. We need just some kind of direction from the board right now to build the budget, but the final decision would be made in June. The final approval that would be made in June. But I just want to let you know what to expect in the years to come, because these forces are on us, and we are going to have to deal with them.
Well, I agree. I don't have a problem with the rate going up, and because I understand the things that you just mentioned that are coming down the pipe. I also am really, I don't want to wear out who we have. Either we really appreciate everybody and how hard they work, but the reality is we're going to have more stuff put upon us to do in the future, and we're going to have the personnel to be able to do it. So we have to keep that stuff in mind. So do you need
I don't necessarily need a motion.
Just kind of a consent.
Yeah, I mean, if an understanding that if everyone's agreeable, that's we're going to use that as the basis for building the budget for next year.
Okay, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, make it so.
Yeah.
I like to make it so.
All right. Okay, so the next somewhat big thing I have is system development charge methodology. So we've been operating under a methodology that was established back in 2004, and we update it every year, and we keep it current. Since we annexed Shady Cove, we have to have some sort of methodology for the SDCs that we would charge in Shady Cove. So that's the primary driver for this. So what I'm doing here is I'm consolidating the general methodology of how we calculate SDCs, and the same would apply for all of them for our interceptor, our collection system, our trunk SDCs, and for the Shady Cove treatment SDC. For SDC methodology updates, you're required to have a public hearing. You're required to give 90 days notice. So we put the notice out on Monday. The hearing is going to be in June, and we're open for comments. And just we don't need anything too much right now, but this is more informational. Just a quick discussion of how we calculate things. We do. It's a 2-part system. There's a reimbursement fee and an improvement fee. And so on the reimbursement fee, you take everything you've ever spent on infrastructure and you divide it by the number of users you have, and that's the share that everybody who's coming in has to pay. It's pretty straightforward. On the improvement fee, you take every project you have in your capital improvement plan, you assign a value for surplus capacity to that. So, some projects are just rehabilitation. They only affect, they don't build capacity, so they don't count as anything. Some of them are entirely for surplus capacity. And then you take the total cost of those projects and you divide it by the number of new users you expect within a time period. And that's the amount that each new user would connect. And you add those together, that's your SDC. So, I've defined the sources of data, how we get the number of users we have, how we apply growth rates and inflation and costs, and all of that is all in the methodology. What the calculation gives you is the maximum amount that can be assessed, and then it's a discretionary action on the board. They can assess any amount up to that, and we've typically always kept ours a little bit below that. And by doing it the way we do it, I mean, there are times when the rates go down, and we've seen that in the White City and the Eagle Point trunk fees, because the projects that we need for that are built. There's no planned projects, and as growth occurs, the justified amount goes down. So anyway, this document, we will publicize this. We've got the notice of public hearing out, and there will be a public hearing for this in June to officially adopt that. And then once that's adopted, then it's kind of on, not necessarily autopilot, but it's automatically renewing. So we reevaluate it every year and recalculate it, and without changing the methodology. And then, I don't know, is there any comments on that one? If you have any, just give me a call. And again, Jim, Lewis, and Wayne, hopefully you got your election papers in, because I think today is the deadline. Tomorrow's the deadline? Okay.
Yeah, in that regard, my packet's ready to go, except I don't have any data for how long I've been on the board, or when I came on the board.
97 years.
You know that for a fact, Mike?
Yeah, I was here.
Okay, I'll go with that unless Carl gets something more conclusive. But I'll get that in this afternoon and tomorrow.
You first came onto the board in 2013.
Very good, thank you. And you're right, Mike.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sometimes it feels that way.
Okay, thanks. We'll take care of that.
All right. That's all I have. And thank you all.
Okay.
Well, general information, hey guys, as general information, there was a little note came on my iPhone that IRS is planning to push the April 15th tax filing to May 17th. So be aware that your taxes could be another 30 days longer to get them in.
Already got one done.
They
Okay,
didn't waive by chance, huh?
Okay, claims. We've got I need a motion to pay the bills.
Well, I
So
make a
moved.
motion that we do that.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Wayne Brown,
Yes.
Pete Harrison,
Yes.
Mike Parker,
Yes.
Jim Lewis,
Yes.
Jim Snyder.
Absolutely, yes.
And we're adjourned.
Okay, thank you all, and we're adjourned.
All righty.
Very good.
Thank you.